better in terms of our on the ball play. We've been quite good at pressing. We haven't always managed to have that creativity that has produced chances. And so we've been very good at chance conversion. So we've kind of been quite efficient when we have had good chances, but we haven't been very good at getting to those. And so I think for us, like for Spurs fans, one of the things that was interesting was to see especially how Signe Gaupset sort of settled into the team, who was our new signing. She was mostly playing on the left, but you'll probably have seen there was quite a fluid sort of like three of her, Olivia Holt and Matilda Vinberg just behind Beth England. And I guess for us, one of the things that was enjoyable about it, even when we weren't quite getting to sort of shots, was that those three were interchanging quite well and we were seeing a lot more creativity. And I think you're right. Like, I think especially having like your back three and then the wing backs, your defense was really solid. But at the same time, like we could start seeing ball movement that was kind of breaking that up and disrupting it a little bit. And so I think it was both frustrating, but also encouraging given where we've been earlier in the season.
No, I totally agree. And I think having Neville and Mailing a bit higher up the pitch sometimes, you know, they're exploiting on the counter, but they were getting caught out in behind a bit, I think, because of that interchange in play between Holt, Gaupset and Vinberg, like you say. So I completely agree. Spurs only had 2 shots on target, though. Are you disappointed with that? Do you think they could have done better? I thought Gaupset was fantastic. I think she was a real thorn in the Leicester City side.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people I know were kind of upset that she got taken off, but it was her first game. And so I also know that Martin Ho, in his press conference before that game, talked about how he wanted to do something, you know, like it was always hard when you've got a double header to do something new in the second game. So this part of me is like, oh, well, maybe, you know, she got taken off because there's a different plan for the second game. I don't know. And I think Maika Hamana also then came on at that point. And she's also our other new signing, obviously on loan from Chelsea. So we're all kind of like, don't fall in love with a loan player. She's only here for a short term. I don't know if you're doing that with Sarah Mailing as well, she's also on loan, isn't she, with you? So it's that kind of like, it's great to see a player who's really good, but also, you know, we don't know how long that's going to last. But yeah, I don't know. Like the shots on, we haven't had a lot of shots in any game. So I think that is going to improve. This is me being the optimistic football fan. Like I can see that things are like that. We're getting into the box more and we're sort of like, I can see opportunities emerging. I think we're also missing Katinka Tamberg, who was our sort of like our signing in the summer and had come in and was, I mean, she's just a very physically strong player. And she was also able to kind of take shots from, you know, places you wouldn't expect to take shots. And so having her back would mean that Beth England just got a little bit more rest. There's a bit more rotation. And like, you know, I'm sure that, like, you know, as well, like when you're a team with a less strong squad, you don't often, it's like it's really nice when you have sufficient players to have rotation where you can bring somebody in off the bench and freshen it up. And yet you don't always have that. And so, yeah.
No, you're so right. And I think Leicester have struggled, particularly last season with injuries, and this season, you know, we have Jutta Rantala out. We've just had Celeste Beret. I know we've had Celeste Beret just out with an ACL injury. Noemi Mouchon's season has been usurped by various injury issues and illness issues. So, and Missy Goodwin as well. You know, she's another one of our young guns that we want to see get more time on the ball. And she came on at the end. But I agree, and I think, you know, Tamberg, she's very physically strong, kind of offers something different for Spurs, and so you'll be eager to kind of get her back. And yeah, I think Noemi Mouchon gave your back line a real test at the end of the game. So when we're talking about potentially, you know, how can both teams kind of change it for next weekend? I mean, we'll discuss this a bit later, but I think seeing Mouchon start might perhaps give City a bit of an edge.
Yeah, I thought Mouchon was really good. Yeah. And I think one of the things, and it, like you were speaking earlier about sort of Ashley Neville and Sarah Mailing pushing up and that leaving Leicester exposed. I think the way that Martin Ho has set up Spurs means that the fullbacks are often exposed, and he often does it slightly lopsided. So it'll be like Amanda Nilden will go up and Evelina Summanen will drop into the back four for a little while or something. but it doesn't always work. It's not always that. And there are times when both of the fullbacks are pushed forward a bit, and none of our backline is that fast. So they like, some of them have really great positioning, some of them are like really good on the ball, but it does mean that we are exposed, especially by attacking wingers. Like, so we had kind of a pretty torrid time against Man United when we had, Mallard and Rolfo down the wing. And, one of the things that Leicester really impressed me with is the sort of the counter and and that's definitely, I can see potential. And you've actually been playing like that definitely last season as well. And so I can imagine that being a space in which, we are weak.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Ashley Neville then, because she was one of the kind of key orchestrators for City in terms of that counter-attacking press, both her and Sarah Mayling. It was Neville's first start of the season, so obviously she hadn't been having that playing time at Spurs. Do you think this has been a good move for her, and what do you think we can expect from her as a player?
So it wasn't her first, I think there must be.
Oh, was it?
No, she started like literally at the start of the season. She had some minor injury, and Josephine Rybrink was starting. But as soon as she came back, I think she came on, I think it was against Leicester, she came on, that was her first substitute appearance, I'm guessing, I think, at Leicester away earlier in the season. And after that, she's been a starter for Spurs. Except for one game where she was replaced by Josephine Rybrink, and I'm not exactly sure why. So she has been starting like absolutely pretty much every game. So she isn't, that, I mean, I love Ashley Neville, so and she definitely isn't a player who, and I think also like having her play with a back three inside her is just going to give her that freedom that will allow her, because we saw that, I think it was in about the 10th minute or something, she just like suddenly like was like on the ball and she went up the pitch, and I can't even remember exactly what happened. There were two phases to it. The first bit was like she drove sort of like most of the way up the pitch, and then there was a little bit of interchange. Leicester lost the ball, she won it back, and that was when her through ball was overhit. And this bit of me was like a Spurs fan going, oh, she did that on purpose. She didn't want to like be responsible for the first Leicester City goal, but I'm sure she didn't. And what it did show is just her ability to absolutely just like that kind of transform a game. And I think if she's in a team where she feels like she's got the manager's confidence and she's allowed to be creative because of the way you set up, she has so much, you're going to have so much fun watching her. So
brilliant, fantastic. Well, I agree. She had a bit of a go at goal, we'll call it that. It was quite wide, but it reminded me of goal of the month. Do you remember this?
Before one, yeah. And I think didn't that come from Asmita El throw? Like, I think that Asmita El did the throw in for that one as well. So I think it was like a double Leicester.
Yeah, and she drove up the pitch once again, and I think decided, this time I'm not going to, play a great through ball. I'm just going to go for goal. Scored from 35 yards out, top left corner. It was a fantastic goal. I remember seeing it on the, Goals of 2022 highlight for the WSL. But no, it's brilliant, and that
and I don't know if you remember. Sorry, it just suddenly occurred to me.
Carry on.
He is a player who Leicester fans have booed in the past as well, which I think is also says something. Like, I think it started about 3 seasons ago. She had one of those quite again. She goes in for a tackle. She had one of those games, and I just remember her being booed and her turning around and like smiling at the Leicester City supporters, and then like carrying on. And I think, and so the last 2 games she's also been booed, which I think it's actually a really good. I mean, how many players in WSL like are at the level where they get booed? It's it's
I agree, and you see, like so Katie McCabe gets booed as well, and I really like that. I like that in that players in the BWSL can be really tough tackling and do go in for it, and you don't see all of that rolling all around on the floor stuff that you sometimes get in the men's side. So I think that's one of her biggest assets. She did get her first shiny yellow card for Leicester, so that's one thing that she'll have to watch out for. But no, and she's so quick still, for a player that's experienced. Like, she's so rapid, and if she goes forward, she knows that she can still cover behind her. And I think that's something, you see that fight in her, you see that will to get back and to make a last ditch tackle. And, most of the time she's really successful in that. So I think she'll be such a good signing.
Yeah.
And I think I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah. So, and I don't think it's like she isn't the fastest player, but what she is I think she's very, like you say, she will go back, she'll make those tackles. And she's a player who she makes a mistake, like even in this game, like some players, if you scored an own goal in your debut, you would just be like in pieces. And that is not the player she is. She's just like, okay, let's get on with it, keep playing. And she never gets ruffled, whether it's just by losing out in a challenge or if it's by something much bigger going wrong. She will just keep playing and it doesn't change. And I think that is really impressive. And it's the speed of, it's just like it's seeing what's happening on the pitch. And so there was an interception she made, I noticed on the weekend, and it was just like she knew where the ball was going, and so she could jump into that interception, make that interception. And she finishes season after season with like the most tackles won, sometimes the most interceptions in the WSL, and like that she's been doing that year after year as a player who didn't come through any kind of professional background. That's the other thing about her, is she only went professional at like 24, 25, which is, most other players now have done that for like, 6 years by that point. And I think that's kind of why I think she's still more fun to watch, is because in some ways she didn't get it all trained out of her. So she still does the things that, like, if you were going to train a player to be in a particular position, you maybe would tell them not to do. But she does
cutting inside. She cut into the midfield. Yeah.
She does, she'll play back. She'll like backheel the ball in a game. There's like games where she'll dink it over a player. And it doesn't always work, but when it does, you're like sitting there, and even if it's, a crappy game, you're kind of like, oh, well, that gave me a bit of joy. And like, it's so rare to have those players who give you joy. So I know I'm like waxing very lyrical.
I think it's important. And, that 2022 era, people thought that she was hard done by not getting called up for the Lionesses. And I know that you'd written on your blog, or people have written on your blog about that. And what were your thoughts on that? Do you think she's still maybe could be in contention, maybe not with the caliber that's on the team right now, but I think she'd have to have one of those like standout seasons. And quite honestly, I do think Spurs new right back who had out with an ACL for the last like 9 months, Ella Morris, is probably like England's right back in waiting. She is amazing as well. So but I can imagine Ash having an amazing half season at Leicester, and people saying again, like, why isn't she in the England squad? And she just won't be. Like, I think she doesn't fit in so many ways. And I think, it's this weird thing as well about, and I don't think it's a bias exactly, like it's easier to work with players who've gone up through the whole Lionesses like system, who've been in the youth teams, who've gone up, they understand what's expected, they're kind of like, they can know how to fit into these international squads. So I think it was always going to be an ask for somebody who at like 28, 29 is shining, but doesn't fit any of those other things. It's a bit like, Jamie Vardy on the men's side. Like that is kind of like, that's the Ash Neville kind of story in a way. And he never really got much time either. No, they're their own characters, aren't they? They play their own way. They all fit into a team structure, but there'll always be that sort of kind of individualism about them. They've got their own things. Ash Neville will always go in hard. So I totally agree. She's a fantastic player, isn't she? And I think we both could talk for another 15 minutes about her, couldn't we? Let's talk a little bit about your projects then, Rachel. Let's talk about your blog and your podcast, and sort of what sparked you to get started. When did you get started? Tell us the story.
So I started the blog in, when was it, like the start of 2022, I guess. And it was mostly just at that time I wanted to read stuff about Spurs women and I couldn't find anything, partly because, it's still mostly the case, although it has got a lot better now. But it used to be that if you were supporting a women's team outside of the sort of big four, it was rarely going to get any coverage on any of the kind of mainstream women's football outlets, which were kind of focused on the title race. And then they would sometimes go, oh, and Spurs played Leicester, sort of like aside. And I just kind of was frustrated that it didn't exist. And so in a way I was like creating it for me, which doesn't make any sense because obviously like, I wasn't getting the benefit of it, but I just kind of thought it should exist. And so, you know, it was also just a trial and error. And I looked and like the website was available. And I thought, okay, I'll see if I can write something and put some stuff up and start doing things. And then about like a few months by the end of that season, I'd been in touch with a few other people who were sort of also wanted to have more Spurs women content out there. And so that's when we decided to start a podcast, just again, because we wanted more content to exist and we wanted there to be more coverage and attention to Spurs women. So yeah, it was both kind of labors of love really, and just like wanting a team that we really enjoyed to get more attention, both from sort of women's football fans and from Spurs men fans, as well as sort of random people, I guess.
No, totally. And I think that's definitely a reason why we started the women's football show here on For Fox's Sake, is that it didn't exist, or it existed in very kind of niche places. And to be kind of the pioneers of the conversation is something, you know, that's really amazing. And it brings a lot more attention, like you say, to the women's team outside of the big four, because there's a lot of social media attention always based around them. And so putting ourselves out there, I think is, you know, it's really important. And I feel like it gives the teams a little bit more of a boost as well. You know, maybe we don't know what happens behind the scenes, but I'm sure that having your support, you know, if the players ever look up and they see, oh, you know, we've got all these great fans, we've got our own kind of fan community that's outside of your BBC Sport, your ITV News articles. And I think, you know, that's so important. And yeah, it's been so fantastic to see the growth of these kinds of podcasts, particularly after the 2022 Euros. And I suppose you preempted that success starting at the beginning of 2022, but how fun was it to kind of grow your site and your podcast post that kind of boom of women's football?
Yeah, I think it's like one of the things as well is, I don't know how you found that in terms of Leicester, but the boom didn't quite affect Spurs as much as it did, again, some of the big four teams, because we didn't have England players, lionesses. Like at some point we got a bit later, we got Bethany England, but you know, by that point she was only occasionally a lioness. Jess Naz got called up, but like hasn't played many minutes. So it's that thing that's like, we're almost got a lioness every now and again, but you don't have the sort of the attention that Arsenal get from having like a team full of lioness players. And you notice that because like at those games, you sometimes get sort of fans who come in England shirts, those which you don't get at the just kind of Spurs games. So I think it's that interesting thing, isn't it, about like it has grown, but it also hasn't affected everything equally. And I'm not sure that clubs have quite worked out how to translate that kind of widespread interest into actual day-to-day support and people coming to the games. So attendance has gone up, but not like crazily. And it's, you know, and I think there's definitely loads more online content. And like you were saying, like there's more blogs, there's more of those things. And that's fantastic. And I think one of the other things I've always been saying is, you know, at the start, there was just a lot of stuff, especially in that sort of the 2022 Lioness period. It was like, oh, isn't it great? Isn't everyone inspiring the kids and inspiring girls? And, you know, it was just very much a sort of a story of inspiration. And what I've enjoyed is I think there is now starting to be much more actual analysis of football and treating it like this is football, this isn't inspirational stories. So yeah.
And I think that's what people want to see, you know, every show that we do here on For Fox's Sake, you know, the women's football show, we talk about the previous game and we talk about it from an analytical point of view. And sometimes it's good to bring in conversations about the growth of the women's game as, you know, that kind of tagline. But I totally agree with you. I think proper analysis is important, definitely. Let's talk about the upcoming FA Cup game then. Leicester City back at Brisbane Road for the second time in 8 days it would be, I guess, by the end of it. 7 days maybe. I can't do maths. So what will Spurs have to do differently, and what do you think Leicester will have to do differently, to put you on the spot?
Well, Spurs will have to get the ball in the back of the net themselves, I guess. So
that would be the first job. Yeah,
that would be the first one. Yeah, I think it's the final balls much more. So for Spurs, I think it's like getting the ball to the final third. They were managing quite regularly. It's getting the ball into the 6-yard box and making decision making there. And taking a few more shots. And so getting into the positions to take shots. I think some of that is going to be about players becoming more familiar with each other and working that out. I mean, I would be really interested at some point Martin Ho has talked about playing Signe Gaupset as an 8 at some point. That would be a surprise to do this early. I think he's probably going to just keep her as sort of like a winger /10 for a while.
Yeah, but
you could imagine at some point him moving her back, probably taking, for Drew Spence, and then you could bring in Micah Hamano alongside the starting players last time. That would be at least interesting, and I'd be curious about whether that kind of changed things. Otherwise, we don't have a lot of options on the bench for players that I think would start. And so I don't think it's going to be very big changes to the starting lineup other than potentially Hamano starting. Leicester, I think Leicester, you've got to make the most of, I think it's those counters is like the place where you are strong. And
do you think sometimes cup games are treated as sort of an opportunity for more bench players to get a starting role? Do you think that both teams will play into that, or do you think that Spurs will still start their best 11?
I think they'll start their best 11. It's like if you had a 3-game week, maybe there'd be more bench players. But I mean, maybe Julie Blackstead is fit now, who's one of our signings. But the problem is, Julie Blackstead is, as far as I'm aware, mostly plays as a left back. So again, and Amanda Nilden has been has played every minute of every game basically this season. So I would be surprised if she came in for her. She could be used as a substitute for her. She could come in as to change the shape a bit, to have more of a traditional winger on the left. So be played in front of her. But otherwise there are not a lot of players who I can imagine kind of starts coming in. And I think Martin Ho, and I don't know if the same is true at Leicester, has been very clear that every game matters at this point. I mean, if we win this game, we get an extra game, otherwise the season's quite short, isn't it? We're down to 10 games after this.
Yeah, it's important for continuity reasons as well. And, Spurs as well as Leicester have new players, and Martin's trying to implement a new system. Same with Rick Passmore. He's trying to create a legacy, as he's talked about, trying to create identity at Leicester. So the more games there are, the more opportunity there is for that to be implemented. I guess from a Leicester point of view, like I said earlier, I'd love to see Naomi Mouchon start. I think she caused a lot of problems for your centre backs. I think her physicality, she overpowered regularly in the 20 minutes that she played. She got through, and she was unlucky not to score. I think her shots were a little bit weak, but hopefully she's got the shooting power in her come this weekend. And I'd like to see her start maybe over Shannon O'Brien, although Shannon O'Brien was used on the wing, so having them both on the pitch would be important, I guess. But I don't think Shannon O'Brien's really offered enough consistency, despite being Leicester's top scorer this season with 5 or 6 goals. She's only got 3 league goals in over half the season now. So I think get Naomi back on the pitch, get her to cause trouble for your back line. And perhaps our new signing, Emma Janssen, might start in midfield. Maybe Rick Passmore will give Liv McLaughlin a bit of a rest, maybe bring her on from the bench. Liv McLaughlin's been tireless in our midfield. I think she's been central to orchestrating that kind of defensively conservative identity that Leicester have, it kind of shown as they've played. So that would be ideal for me. But my key hope is that Naomi Mouchon starts in that striker role.
I thought can I just ask you?
Yeah, go ahead.
What happened to Janina Leitzig? Because she is sort of our nemesis and so often. And why was she not playing? Was it just this rotation, or?
I wonder if it was rotation. I wonder if it was perhaps an injury.
Right.
Maybe, she was on the bench. She was named in the matchday squad. But considering, Olivia Clark was the number 2 goalie, she was still just as effective, I think, despite that own goal mishap, miscommunication. That's probably from a lack of playing together, her and Ashley Neville. But I think she still had a really good performance, I think, Olivia Clark. So I totally agree with you. I have no idea. I don't think anyone has any idea why that decision was made from Rick Passmore. I did try and find out with the old Google search, but I think, maybe putting Janina Leitzig back in goal might maybe psychologically boost Leicester in terms of thinking, right, we've got our star player back on the pitch, because she's been massive for us this season. And like you say, a bit of a thorn in Spurs' side in the past. So yeah, I'm honestly not sure. Maybe it's injury related. Maybe she's getting an extended rest past the winter break. So we'll see.
The other thing,
carry on, please.
Say is, it's like an ongoing riff amongst Spurs fans, is that Rosella Ryan loves a cup game. She's a
former Spurs player as well.
Yeah. So she's a former Spurs player, and she used to be she wasn't the player who inspired confidence, let's say, when she came on, but she is a total chaos player. She is like a player who just brings total, you don't know what is going to happen.
No.
And mostly we are I know you've only used her for sort of last 10 minutes of games at the moment, or injury time, and that's kind of, but she is that chaos player who, our kind of the Spurs fan nightmare of what Leicester can do is bring Ros on and create chaos, and she will get her, her cup goals. I mean, usually she's more of a Subway Cup player than she is an FA Cup player, but she did I think, change the game for us last season. No, not last season, the season before, when we went on our FA Cup run. So she has that chaos in her, which is just, I remember her Spurs heritage.
Yeah, I remember her having that cup streak, and she can shoot. She's fairly precise when she wants to be, when she's not busy creating other chaos. So yeah, I wonder if Rick Passmore is privy to that kind of secret reputation that she has, and might employ her a bit earlier than the 80th minute and see if she can bring something to the side. It will have to be a test, kind of, he'll have to assess who's playing and who's playing well in terms of his tactics. What I hope Leicester don't do is, maybe if they score first, just sit back for the rest of the game. I'd like to see them be more ruthless, take more chances, even if it's against a team that's a lot higher than them in the table. I'd like to see, I like the defensive identity, but I also want to see kind of creativity, and I want to see them get Hannah Kane on the ball, get Shannon O'Brien cutting inside and shooting and not scoring random deflection goals for once. Because I think both of us have struggled with not quite getting those clear-cut chances, clear-cut goals this season. It's been a little bit kind of, higgledy-piggledy in that sense. Do you have a score prediction for us?
I think on our podcast, I predicted 4-2, but that was just me being optimistic and hoping for a chaos, sort of like a totally crazy game. My more realistic prediction is probably, I don't know. I do think Leicester's defense is really good. I'm just hoping for that moment where you collapse, where you get to a team where it's something goes wrong and it all goes wrong. But it's probably, I'm hoping a 2-1 to Spurs.
Yeah. I'm going to go a little bit crazier. I'm going to say 3-2 Leicester, but only it's going to be 2-1 to Spurs until the 96th minute or something, and then there's going to be some chaos and we'll equalise. And I'm going to say it's going to go into extra time.
Yeah, I like that.
Just so I can watch more football.
That is true. That is the only way that we're going to get more football out of this season.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that will be my prediction.
Are we going to penalties? We're not going to penalties though. That would be like, no.
I don't think so, because maybe, to be fair, no, I can't go back on it. I've said it now.
It's done.
3-2 to Leicester. You said 2-1 Spurs. Well, I think that about wraps up our discussion, unless we want to talk any longer about Ashley Neville. But I think the viewers will be happy with the amount of time we spent on her anyway. Thank you so very much, Rachel, for coming on. It's been a pleasure to have you, a pleasure to have your insight, to talk real football as well as the growth of the game. And just a reminder for everyone viewing, For Fox's Sake.news is our new website, launched this month. To subscribe monthly, it's the same price as a pint. To subscribe for the year, it's £50, and you get loads of exclusive access to interviews, match day reaction, opinion pieces, etc. And we'd love to have you as a member, and you can get access to way more exclusive content like the lovely chat we're having today. So thank you so much for watching, everyone, and we will see you next time.